We're in the exhibition called Polyharmonies, and it is an immersive audiovisual installation with 3 screens and 4 speakers that are emitting sound in quadriphony. So you hear all the objects that are around you. We are in a kind of a glass cube, which is in this virtual space, and we can move around this glass cube with this gamepad. And what we see in this cube are 5 geometrical bodies, and those geometrical bodies all do emit a sound, a specific frequency. So every geometrical body emits one frequency. For instance, this cube emits a very low frequency. We can hear it better if we move inside the cube. And the thing is that the sound is emitted by virtual oscillators that are fixed on the vertices of this geometrical figure. So in the case of the cube, it will be 8 vertices that each emit the same frequency. But the frequencies vary slightly because we have a Doppler effect. Like if you hear a car passing by, when it approaches and when it leaves again, you hear a slightly different frequency. And it's the same here. If we move towards the cube, we have a certain sound, and when we leave it and move away from it, we have a slightly different sound. And since the cube is rotating permanently, although all the frequencies of the 8 oscillators are the same, we have slight frequency variations. So this is one of the geometrical bodies. There is another one here which emits a different frequency, and here we have much more oscillators because it's a more complex geometrical figure. If we move inside of it, we are surrounded by those oscillators that are all around us, and we hear this in this surround quadriphonic sound. So one of the first things that you can do in this installation is to move around and explore what are the specific sounds of each geometrical body. This is another sound. If we leave it, we can go here to the tetrahedron, which emits a high-pitched sound. We have this octahedron, which emits this sound. And there is the sun in the middle, which emits no sound, but if you go into the middle of this space, well, you can kind of hear all the bodies which are around you. Now, the second thing that you can do, if you press a button on the pad, you can reassemble all the figures around the central point, which is marked by the sun, well, you can slowly move towards the center, and now you hear all the 72 oscillators in this installation around you. And since you have 72 oscillators with each having a Doppler effect, the soundscape around you becomes a soundscape of a quite high complexity, like if you're moving around was playing a strange, complex musical instrument. If you move in the center of this whole space, which would be the center of the sun, you hear just a very smooth, static chord, which is, in this case, is an E sharp minor chord. And this is probably the least interesting place in this whole installation where you can be, because everything is white, right? You're in the center of the light which is emitted, which illuminates the whole scape, but you yourself cannot see anything, and the sound is very static. And the idea of the installation is you search for a place where the soundscape around you becomes the most interesting, with the most variations, and with giving you the most intense experience of this soundscape. So as we move away from the figures, of course, we hear them less and less. The sound becomes attenuated until we don't hear anything anymore. You have two possibilities. Either you're in absolute silence, you move towards the center, which is a very constant, stable chord, and somewhere in between there's the realm of complexity, where you hear all the bodies which interact in an interesting manner. So this is for the technical aspect. There is another element which is here, which you see around you, is a celestial map which has been drawn in the 17th century by a Dutch astronomer, Frederik de Wit. And in this painting you see the 48 constellations that were known at his time. Those are the classical constellations of Ptolemy. And around the center there's this line marked with the black and white interruptions. You see this would be the circle of the zodiac, where you have the constellation of Leo, Cancer, Gemini, Taurus, Pisces, Aquarius, Capricorn, Sagittarius, Scorpion, Libra, Virgo, Lion, Cancer, Gemini, Taurus, etc. The work explores a very ancient idea of the celestial or universal harmony. So this idea of the cosmic harmony dates, as far as we know, to the pre-Socratic philosopher Pythagoras, who walked by a blacksmith workshop and he heard the hammers striking, and some of the hammers that were striking at the same time produced a harmonious sound, and other ones produced what he felt as a disharmonious sound. And he walked into the workshop and started to compare the hammers, and he noticed, for example, that if one hammer weighs the double of the weight of another hammer, they would produce a harmonious sound, which we today would call an octave. So if you have a double of the weight of one hammer with respect to the other, the interval is called an octave. If one hammer weighs 2 halves and the other hammer weighs 3 halves, then you would have a third musical interval. And because Pythagoras was a mystic, he extrapolated the idea of this harmony on the whole universe, and one of the things that he thematized was the proportions of the radius of the orbits of the planets with respect to planet Earth were similar to those proportions between those hammers or between those musical instruments. And his idea was that the planets were together playing a cosmic harmony, and this is this harmony that determined how the solar system was organized. So it was the idea of Pythagoras. And if you go a couple of years forwards, many years forwards, you have Johannes Kepler, who was a pupil of Galileo Galilei, and Kepler tried to prove or try to understand this Pythagorean notion of the cosmic harmony a little better. And we have to remind ourselves that they didn't know anything about gravitation theory. So they were trying to explain why are the planets around stable orbits, why is the universe constant, why doesn't it just collapse, or why is this whole system holding? And the theory was a geometrical theory. What Pythagoras imagined, that you can take the base Platonician geometrical bodies, and if you stack them up on each other, for example, you take the cube, inside the cube you would have a tetrahedron, inside the tetrahedron you would have an octahedron, and so forth, this empalement of the geometrical figures would give you the proportion of the orbits of the planets with respect to the Sun. Kepler was also thematizing that every geometrical body would have a frequency, and the distances of the planets from the Sun would together play this cosmic tone. But it didn't work out. He saw immediately this Pythagorean idea of a cosmic harmony wouldn't work, that the universe would actually be disharmonious. So his experiment turned out not satisfying to him, but he still tried to make it and tried to thematize it. And he was looking for a couple of ways to understand this idea of cosmic harmony. One of the things was that Kepler was the first one who discovered or formalized the fact that planets were moving in an elliptical movement around the Sun, so it were not just circles but ellipses. And one of the hypotheses that he set up is that the harmonies were played between the highest speed of on the ellipsis, the highest movement speed of the planet along the ellipsis, and the slowest speed. And one of the examples was for the planet Earth, where you would have the interval between mi and fa, so that would be the two sounds. And this is a minor interval. And the explanation of Kepler was, well, it's a minor chord because the Earth is a place of human suffering. You can hear every geometrical body individually and see those geometrical bodies. So if we start with the cube, that would correspond to the planet Saturn and the element Earth, because Kepler was also combining his ideas about geometries and the Platonic geometric bodies and the orbits of the planets with ideas of alchemy. So he decided that the cube was the planet Saturn and the element Earth. Then this one, the tetrahedron, it would be the element fire and the planet Mars. This one, octahedron, would be the planet Venus and the element air with its specific sound. This would be the planet Jupiter and the element water. And this one is an element that we don't consider anymore, but which was important in the ancient theories. It's the element ether, and would correspond to the planet Mercury. Another thing is, in this installation, you see that the shadows of the planets are moving slowly across the classical constellations of the zodiac circle, which also evokes the idea of astrology, where you would interpret the sky by the positions of the planets inside the constellations. So you can listen to every planet or to every geometrical body individually, but you can also put them all together, and in this way really listen to all the 72 oscillators at the same time and experience what Kepler could have perhaps imagined hearing, but he of course couldn't hear because he couldn't make a quadriphonic sound simulation of his model. And one last thing is when we move towards the center, so we can kind of come back to the theory of Plato in this metaphor of the cavern. According to this allegory of the cavern of Plato, we live at the bottom of a cavern, and everything we see are just shadows of things which are projected on the wall of the cavern by the fire. And as we rise in our consciousness and in the philosophical theory, we suddenly see the things. We don't see the shadows of things anymore, we see the things, and when you move further, you see the fire which is producing the shadows. But if you manage to leave the cavern, you would see the shadows of real things in the outside world. For example, shadows of trees or mirror images of trees in the water. And the next step of consciousness would be to see the trees themselves. But the ultimate step of consciousness for Plato is the absolute consciousness of everything, the light of consciousness itself, which is illuminating the world, which is the absolute and inaccessible knowledge. And this figure for Plato is the figure of the sun. And in this installation, well, you can also move towards the sun, as Plato in his allegory of the cavern suggested. But if we get into the sun, what happens to us is this absolute consciousness is pure whiteness and just a constant unsaturated sound. And again, it's probably the most boring place in this, where you can be in this virtual world in the middle of the sun. And where interesting things happen, it's again in the between, where which mathematics today would call complexity. Life happens in the realm of complexity. It's neither in the realm of the absolute harmony, but it cannot either be in the realm of silence where you don't hear anything anymore. It's really on this edge between totally harmonious convergence of the frequencies of the universe and the silence. And this is where we stand here. And one of the things that I didn't tell you is when I looked at this, I thought this looks kind of like a living cell with the with the noyau, the kern of the living cell inside, and it evoked to me another theory. It's a theory. It's Aristotle's theory, and Aristotle was thinking, well, there were two parts of the universe. There was a sublunar world, and there was the supralunar world, like the world below the moon and the world above the moon. And the world above the moon was the world of the geometrical perfection of eternal forms. And below the moon, well, those forms would mingle together, and as the forms would mingle, they generate life, what we call life, which is also a realm of mortality. It's where we live, but we're also bound to die. So we're not eternal; we're imperfect in the sense of Aristotle. And this is exactly this place where actually life is, when you have this kind of an imitation of a living cell.